My name is Evelyn Joyce Gaylard, and this is my life. I do know that I had to cook some cherries one night, and Mum hadn't come home from work, and Dulcie from over the road, my friend who I still see at 91 too, I put the cherries on, and then Dulcie and I went for a ride down to her grandmother's, and how I never set fire to that house I'll never know, but when I come home the cherries were nice and black, and so was the saucepan. My name is Evelyn Joyce Gaylard. I was born Evelyn Joyce Waller in Williamstown in 1930. I don't know where they met because my mother came from Hamilton and my father came from Port Melbourne. There's nobody to ask now that whether my dad must have gone, I think he had some relatives up in the western area, not Hamilton, but somewhere up that way, and whether he and Mum met up there. I'm not even sure where they got married. We've got the photograph, but I can't tell you where they got married. Well, Dad, the only trade he had was a house painter, and he was very good at it. Auntie Flo, my aunt, they had an old Morris can hardly, we used to call it, can hardly get up the hills, you know. It was navy blue, and he painted a red line as perfect as you like, right around that car, and it was still there till the day they got rid of it. So he was a good painter, but he was a bit slow. And Mum worked in a shop in Hamilton, I think in a dressmaking section or something like that, I'm not really sure. And then when we got older and going to the school, she worked at the dockyards in Williamstown in the canteen section. Yeah. One stage she did go out and work at the race course at the trots. I think in the canteen. I remember Mum heading off. First couple of years and we lived in Strathcalla in the Western District. Yes. And there's nobody to ask now how long did we live up with Auntie Flo and Uncle Tim. So it must have been just not long after I was born, 1930 or something, you see. You know that it must have been a baby to get put in and sleep in a drawer of a cupboard. And I was thinking about that picture of me in the box on somebody's lawn. That must have been up in that area. See, they pulled the drawer out of a cupboard, and that's what I slept in at this lady's post office. And I don't remember actually where we lived much between that and Osborne Street. I'll point this lass out here. This is my friend Dulcie Saker, that we still keep in touch. We've known one another 90 years. I remember we lived in Cole Street because I was 3.5. Because Dulcie, my friend, you see, she said to me we met when we were 3.5. And I was living at Cole Street at that time. We lived here in Osborne Street and she lived across the road, and she told me her mother sent her to go round the corner to buy a loaf of bread, mind you, at 3.5. And I was sitting on the steps of this 2-storey house that we lived in, and we had moved out of that house when they brought Barry home from hospital. Would have been in 1934 when we'd gone down into Osborne Street, and we lived in that house till I left to get married, and then my mum and dad passed away in that house, 1978. They died.
What school did you go to?
Williamstown State School until grade 5. You know, I started there in the babies, and I think it was about grade 1 or 2. There was a polio epidemic, and in the Williamstown State School was closed for 6 months, and we had to do lessons at home by paper book. This was the state school because And there's no school photographs of our high school because that was wartime and they never took photographs. So I remember when I was pretty young in school and the first year after the epidemic, and we were given a piece of paper with a picture of an apple on it, and we had to cut around it, which I did. Then I just screwed up the paper that was left, and then when the teacher came along, she wanted to know where the rest of the paper was, and I'd screwed it up and she smacked me around the legs. And then I went to the Williamstown High School for the next 4 years. But I went to intermediate in the 4th form. If you were pretty clever, you went to grade form 5 and you did what they call leaving. But I only went to the form 4. Form 3, I got my merit. That was the first certificate. Then I got the intermediate. Then I left and went to work. We did cookery and we did sewing and we did phys ed. And then in those war years, we used to have to do air raid practice, and we used to have to go out and lay in the gutter near the school with a rubber in your mouth, because we were near the oil wells, oil tanks at Spotswood. You see, they wasn't that far, and so we had to practice that in case there was a raid, we run out and get into the gutter and put a rubber in our mouth, because apparently if, the noise, we'd shut our mouth perhaps and do damage to our jaws and things. We had little cases and everything that were if we were going to be evacuated, we would have had to go, and you were called out alphabetically. And you see, and I went home and I was crying to my mum that I'd probably be bombed because I was Waller and I was last on the list. That was probably the only thing. School was still the same. We did and I chose commercial, you see, so I wasn't going to be a teacher or anything. I was going to go into an office. I started at Evelyn's in January 1946. I think my dad was in the Masons at that stage.
Wow.
Got an idea that he heard about it at one of the Masons' meetings, and that I just went up to Evelyn's for an interview, and I got it. It was our office staff, the 4 of us. See, and this was our office staff again. He was a very clever fellow, Keith. He was the secretary, but he wanted to be a school teacher, but he had pink eyes. Albino, and I know he then became the accountant for Evelyn's. But when he applied to be a school teacher, they said that kids would ridicule you, something terrible. And that was in those days. Yeah. So they suggested he take another course, and then he became an accountant. And this was my boss, Eustace. I went out with him for a while. It was a good little office. It was a nice little office. Yeah, look, there's an Evelyn's truck again.
So talk a little bit about Evelyn's and, those sort of early days of work and things like that.
Yes, well, when I first went there, I was the telephonist. I had to answer the phone. They had a switchboard, that you poke cords in, and answer the phone. So I think we had about 6 lines or something. But and then so I had to do that, and then it was junior, so I had to make the tea. In those days, we had to have a cup of tea and everything. And I think we worked from 9 till 5 in those days. Evelyn's was an engineering firm, an engineering shop. They had a boilermaker shop. The next door was they had a building next door, and that was a garage. They had a mechanic, but they had lots of employees, and in those days they had 3 fellows to 1 apprentice, both in the machine shop and the fitting shop and the boilermaker shop. They had a big foundry. That they made castings and things for stoves, and the cast iron things like that, and they made all sorts of things. And then eventually they made street sweepers, big machines that would go and sweep the streets. Mr. Keogh was the man who designed the one that we made. We were pretty much first to do it. But they sold them locally, and then we got an order for overseas, Japan, I think, or something. But sadly, they brought in one from America cheaper than we could make it in Australia, which was sad. I was still there after they went into receivership because, you see, we went broke. And you see, they had to sell out. And they sold out to Porto and Valenti, and he makes roads. And so he bought Evelyn's out, and so we moved down to Altona. I suppose it was good in a way, although if you did move from one company to another, you got more experience. I mean, I just knew Evelyn's back to front. Well, then when Porto took over, I had to learn the computers, you see, and nobody dare speak to me on the day I did the payroll because, I was learning a computer. Because overall I was there over 50 years, even when the other fella bought it out. Yeah, I stayed on until I retired in 96. This was Owen that I was married to. Oh, that's me on my wedding day. Well, through Kathy Bird, she had this sort of a relative, Johnny Linklater, and he was in the Air Force at the same time as Owen. And sort of, we all went out in a four, you see. And at any rate, I said I wouldn't go out with that fella again. I said, he drinks. I said, and at any rate, so then he came and asked me would I go out? And I said, no. I said, you're a drunkard. I said, you drink. And he said, and do you know that slimy he never drank a drop in front of me, ever. Oh. And yet he never stopped drinking. But he was in the Air Force and, and he'd be doing it down there and, and everything. And then when I found out that was it, out. God, I couldn't have cooked a worse family if I'd have tried. This is my mother and father-in-law, you see. And she said, going to have any grog at the wedding? And I said, no. And she said, well, we're not coming. I said, good, stay away. I said, you're not welcome. Anyway, they fronted up. But we didn't know anything about grog. At my 21st birthday, Dad never drank and we never knew anything about having grog at a wedding. That's when she said, well, you've got to have grog at the wedding. I said, no, we'll stay away. We became good friends before they died. Oh, not long. I suppose 4 years. That was Owen. I think that was 1953. I think that's just about the end of it, I think. It was Wally Duxby. He was my friend, and him and his wife. When I was getting rid of Owen, he took me down to Phillip Island where Owen was in hospital, you see, and I said to Owen when I got down there, get out and get your pants on. And he said, are you going home? And I said, no. I said, you coming out of here. I said, I never want to see you again. And we had to call into some lady's place because Owen and this fella had gone down to Phillip Island and they had a car accident, you see, so he was in hospital and his mate. And so we went to the mate's house and the mother said, oh, aren't we lucky? She said, they never got killed. I said, it was the worst day of my life. Said it'd be better if they had both been killed. So that was the end of Owen. Oh, they were all nice. Maybe it was me that wasn't nice and they all took off. Well, see, Leonie and I had a flat together in St Kilda Road for 12 months and then I bought that house in Yarraville. Not long before that, it had been shifted from Spotswood to that block of land because nobody had been in it on that block but me, you see. So, and that was one of the options. I remember seeing other houses and they had wet walls and, different things, and then they told me about this one. The Catholic Church had moved a house from Spotswood, I think it was, to this vacant block. And because then, you see, I had to make my payments to Bendigo Bank and also Father Smith. I think it was about £4,000. And I had to take out a second mortgage, you see. I think I paid him off pretty quick and lively, like within a year or something, because he was absolutely delighted to get his money, But it took, I remember, 5 years with the Bendigo Bank before I hit any money off the principal. 5 years paid off the interest. And I did have a look and it was 8% interest. in those days. That was my little car, my Fiat. And so I had a little Fiat. I gave that to my dad, and that was when he shot down Salisbury Street and straight into my driveway, and I nearly had a seizure because he never stopped. He just went, you know. I said, I'm not teaching him to drive anymore. But that was the front door. Then that house now, they've changed the windows, I believe. I've sort of seen it, but that was right down the end of Salisbury Street, and next to that was the tip.
That's right.
Remember?
Yeah.
There we are, good old Sid.
So that was in, was it
16th of September, 1967. Yeah. Used to think he was God's gift to women, and I say, how can you be God's gift to women? Your nose is crooked. This is the Gaylards. Oh, good old Ma. There's Sid and his brothers, and his three sisters, and his old mum. One of the nieces or something said, the old lady said to Sid, oh, this nice girl, I forget who she was, she can come away with us next year. And I said to the old lady, I said, don't you dare make arrangements for us. I said, if we can ask you to come, that's fine, but don't you dare ask anyone else. Oh, Sid said, you don't talk to my mother like that. I said, well, somebody has to. 67, and he died in 73. It's only 6 years.
6 years, yeah. Right.
God, I've done the whole bloody lot, haven't I? Hey? We put Sid in the ground. Anyway, Ian must have been with us. He said, where's Sid? And we didn't dare say he was cremated. So we said, oh, he's in there. And he said, oh, really? He said, oh, well, look, when he comes back, ask him, has he had a good time? Brian Eustace was my boss at Eblings, and Brian was in the Victorian Swimming Association, and anyway, Bill, of course, was president of the Victorian Swimming Association for years, and then the Australian Swimming, and they were having a ball dance. They had a ball every year, and Bill must have said to Brian, you know, because Bill had friends, you know, and been to these balls before, and he must have run out of partners or something. And Brian said, oh, the girl in our office might go with you. And anyway, and you know, because I think he was 15 years older than me, you know, sort of, but it didn't matter because so was Sid, you know, so that didn't matter. But, oh, well, he said, we'll give it a go. And, of course, so we went out to the ball, and then we just started going together, you see, and I think we would get together for 14 years. And see, he gave me this nice little ring one Christmas, and I said, oh, are we engaged? And he said, no. And his family thought we were engaged, you see. I got on fairly well with I still keep in touch with them all, the Slades, and I still keep in touch with some of the Gaylards, you know. So he never was a swimmer, like really, but he got into the administration as a younger person, and he went all through referees and umpires and everything for many years, and more in the local swimming, like in the January holidays we always went on the week it was a country championships, and you see then he'd be you know, very to the fore in that. And see, I had some lovely holidays with Bill because, you see, he would go away to the swimming overseas as an official, and away I'd go too. Mrs. Slade sometimes. Olympic Games, 1988 at Seoul. So, you see, I was, you know, in grateful acknowledgement of your support to the Australian Olympic Games team. There you go. See, oh yeah, I was a bit, you know, feather in my cap, you know.
So you would have went to that one?
Yeah, that's right. We were there, and Olympic Games 1988. So there you go. At least we've got a date of something now, Marcus, at long last. But we all had to pay our own way, like it was nothing in those games. And in the swimming world, very rarely got anything. The officials and always had to pay their own because it was purely amateur. See, the athletics always had a backing with finance, but the swimming never did. And I think the swimmers got paid, things paid, but any officials or anything like that, we all had to pay our own accommodation and everything, because it was, they went for the love of the games, I was out at Bill's that weekend when Barry rang. No, that was really sad because the chappie next door, apparently after it happened, you see, the kids threw the ball over the fence and Dad wouldn't throw it back or something. And sadly Dad had this cane cutting thing down beside him, you see, and as you see he came out and the fella shot him. Because Mum was in bed at that time with the cancer. He was a funny little man, but he wasn't really vicious. And he would never have. They said he never ever did raise this knife or whatever it was. You see, Barry rang me, and then when I came over, and after the weekend, then they took Mum up to their place, up to your place, and we had to go then to identify him. Coroner's Court, I think it is. Yeah, he hadn't actually been identified by anybody, you see. They wheeled him out or whatever and lifted up the curtain, and Barry was hanging onto my elbow, and I thought he was gonna break my arm. He was absolutely in a mess, poor old Barry, you see. Just lifted up the thing, and we had to say that was Dad. He didn't deserve to go that way, but it's terribly sad. And I went in the house, and then I went up to the front room, and Mum cried, and she said, silly old Harry, she said, he shouldn't have done that. She said, I might have known he'd leave me to face the music. Like he was buried, and you see 5 weeks later Mum was buried. At the time what happened is to all those lovely flowers, because, there were flowers everywhere with this bit in the paper, and everything. And we said to the undertaker, what happens to these flowers? And he said, well, if there's a funeral after that funeral, he said, we throw them in the tip. So I took all those flowers for Dad home and put them on my back lawn. I said, well, if they're going to die here, they might as well die at my place. So poor old Mr. Quarrier, I think it was, loaded them all up again. And then he did that with Mum's. And Joan was very kind, and she said, and I'm sure she said her and the boys, you made them all into little posies and took them round to the ladies at an old age, right up the end of Osborne Street near North Williamstown. And well, my dad was in hospital in the Williamstown Hospital with appendicitis. Frank McCafferty was a merchant seaman. The boat came into Melbourne, the bank line I think he was on, it was a line of ships, and he was in hospital for some reason at the Williamstown Hospital in the bed beside my dad. Dad came out after the appendicitis, was fixed up and everything. The boat had gone. And so he had to stay at the Seamen's Mission in Williamstown, and it wasn't very long, a couple of weeks or something, and my dad said, well, we better, he was on his own, we better look after him. He didn't stay with us, he stayed at the mission. But, you know, he came and we took him to the movies, or we gave him a meal or something, you see. Well, then he got on the boat and went home. He was 21 and I must have been 17 when this happened. And then, you see, we wrote all these years, and then he was Scottish and he went home to Scotland. Then he went to America, but he used to work on the Staten Island ferries in America. Then he went back to Scotland and we would talk on the phone and send cards and letters, and, you know, I've got some of his letters, and he might have got a bit amorous, you know, if he had to come back, you know, what would have been the situation and everything. But in the meantime, his sister wrote, you know, we can correspond, and then she died. He had a Scottish accent, he had an American accent, and I think he had a few drinks when we'd talk on the phone, and I'd say, I can't understand you, you know. And we did that for all those years. Yes, he married.
Oh, he did?
He married. I think he said his wife died. They weren't apparently married for very long. They never had any children. And he had a brother. And probably when I got this letter that I have read since, that, you know, he said what might have happened if he had have come back. But see, I didn't take it in notice at the time because I was with somebody. I was either married or, you know, or I was okay.
Yeah.
His whole estate was left to me. I said, what about the family? And they said, well, we don't know anything about family. Well, one night a phone call came and it was a policeman from Scotland. He said that they had found him dead in his house, and normally he'd sort of apparently become a bit of a recluse, and the people next door were very good and looked after him, but they had been on a holiday for 2 or 3 weeks. When they came home, they found that he had died sitting at the kitchen table, and the policeman said, we've been through his papers, and he said, it's all here in black and white that you are the beneficiary of his estate. He said, it's all yours. So I'm not sure how old that is, but we worked it out at one stage that I was 17 and he was 21 when we met. And only because we did this nice little job, because he never had 2 bombs to rub together, and we never had much more, but we'd shout him to the pictures or have him only for 2 or 3 times. And it was and when the policeman rang and I said, you know, I've never ever heard anything like this, you know. And he said, it's all here, it's legally done. He said he was very methodical, he's done it properly, and he said there's no hassle as far as we're concerned on this side. And I've got his watch over there. I was always a little bit nervous. The windows were close to the street, and you see, I had that security door moved from the front door to across the front because my bedroom, I was in the little tiny veranda, and that's when I knew that, I mean, people could have walked on the veranda and thrown up my window and, you know, and got in. So then I had the security door moved to the street. And so, you see, then when I got this money from Frank, then that's when I decided, well, I'll move and into this brand new one. Hadn't have got any money from Frank, I'd probably still been down there, you see, because it was quite all right, that little place. It was enough for me. But I always was very nervous that it was right on the street, because I don't know how many times I didn't lose the letterbox. They used to just pull the letterbox off and smash it, and at one stage the power was off. They got into the power boards up and one of the other units had all the power, and they pulled all the power points out and things like that, and I thought, right, I've had enough, you know. So Well, they've got the photographs of Barry, you know, as a little boy and then as older a little bit. The only thing we were so proud of Barry was when he got Apprentice of the Year, yeah. No, he was a bit of a quiet kid. I remember when he used to sleep in the sleep out, you see, and Mum used to call him and he was a terror to get up. And I think one time I went out and opened up the door and said something or another and he let me have a mouthful and I took off. I didn't care whether he was out of bed or not. Oh, there's Barry in his lovely car. Remember he used to like the big cars?
Yeah.
He looks the part with the hands in the pockets, doesn't he, eh? There's Barry. And there's he up there. My Rusty that I got from the dog's home. And was driving the car, Mum was sitting in the back with the dog. To this day, we didn't know whether it had savaged Mum or not, but she had to sit there on the way home with the dog from the dog home. Oh, and this is when I made my debut. I was finished school. The council debutante ball, I had to ask the fella from the Yarraville Post Office to be my partner. Good old Jack Arch. And it was the year after the war. Well, it must have been 1947. When was the war over? 45. And you couldn't buy proper material. And Mum bought all this net, and then she would see that was circles like that, and she made little frills out of them and made big circles because you couldn't buy lace or anything. It was after the war years. And this is Shirley Templeton from over in Geelong. Remember you took us over there? And you see that's Bob and Colin. Colin's passed away. That's Bob. He's still alive. Now that's Ronnie Cutler. That's Jeannie's brother.
Oh, right. Yeah.
This is Heather and Robbie and Jennifer. Now you know who they are, don't you? They're Auntie Ede's kids.
Right.
You know, they're in Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
That's right, you see. And Shirley had TB and she was in this hospital at Hamilton, and you have to stay in the hospital for months and months, you know. And we went to a sort of a park at Wanturna or something where they had the koalas. And we went there, you know, look all dressed up like as if we're going out somewhere exciting, you know, and was to hold a koala. This is Heather Chandler and Robbie Taylor. Remember them? You know Heather? Do you remember Heather up in Hamilton?
Hamilton, yeah.
And she was Chandler and so they were brother and sister.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Robert, and that's Jennifer. Robert Taylor, was that Jennifer and Heather Taylor's brother. That was the three of them. Might have been Heather. No, that must have been Heather, I think. Yeah, Heather. Yes, remember that we sitting on the horse. We'd go up to Auntie Edie's farm in Hamilton, and for holidays, you know, we'd go up on the train or something, yes, and get up on the horse like as if we knew it all about it. And we were at one stage on another little horse. It was Mickey, and Mickey was a bit frisky, you see, and when you got on him, he, you know, went like that, and my mother just kicked him in the belly, you know. and steadied him down because we were in a mess, you know. The nice boy David, he gave me a lovely crystal cabinet. It was a cupboard with, you know, drawers and shelves and everything you got when you were getting engaged, but we never got that far because he was younger than me and I thought that was terrible. So I thought, no, I need somebody older. Oh, no, this was my 21st. That's David. And see, that's Kathy Bird. That was my friend. And we actually did this kissed in front of my dad. I thought Dad was going to have a seizure when he's taken the photograph. We're up in Hamilton at the farm, at Auntie Ede's farm, and I think we'd gone to Port Fairy to the beach that day. I tell you what, poor old Dad was a bit narrow-minded, you know.
Is that a gun, is it?
Yeah, David had the gun. I think it was Uncle George's gun because we were up on the farm, with the hay and everything. when David was in the army. He was an amateur boxer, and I went once to see it. Oh, God, when they smashed one another around, I said, I'll never go again. So no, I don't think David did either, because Uncle Reg's given me a good blow-up and look at my face. You know, saying what a great person I was. Oh, that was old Reg. See, that was Dad's uncle.
Oh, I see.
See, and now there's Marie. So see, we went to the zoo.
Well, probably in Melbourne, like
Melbourne Zoo, yeah. This was Granny that looked after her and see, there was my grandmother who was her sister.
Oh, right.
See, that little turker there is Barry. That was Bob, Marie, me, Joy, Barry, and Colin Templeton. You see, and so that's why Marie wants to go back up there to near that area where her mum and dad are built, you know. Now here's Marie. She was bridesmaid for somebody up. There's a family up in Gilderoy called the Kobiolkis. They're apparently a well-known family, and she was a flower girl at one stage. So, Marie. And you see there's the two grannies. Oh, that's Marie and Arthur.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, they were down for the day. And that's in front of the house too, because here's the lattice work, you see. He told me one time Marie was in hospital, so he decided to wash the kitchen's floor because, you know, she was spotlessly clean, you see. So anyway, and he said to me, guess what, Joy? He said, I told Marie, he said, when she was in hospital, I've washed the kitchen floor. And she said, did you get down on your hands and knees and do it? And he said, no, I did it with the mop. She said, well, it's not done properly. Poor old Arthur. He said he'd never do it again. I said, what's the man to do? Because she always got down on her hands and knees. See, there they are, there. That's them. That's lovely. Down to Lawn for a holiday with Kathy Bird. See, that's Kathy here. Oh, I'm not in that one. No. But anyway, we got mixed up with some friends, fellas, and I think I went out with this bloke for a while. And that was us, you know, these holidays. We went to a guest house, you see, not a hotel or anything, but a guest house. Yeah, and you sort of mixed in, you know, and that's the holidays you could have, and Mum helped out because, well, I had to give up some of my money, my 34 bob, you know, and they went to start to work, well, you just handed over your money, you know. And this was the guest house and everything. It was just... It was funny when you'd line up outside the bathroom, there'd be great queues, and you could pick out the married couples on their honeymoons because they went into the bathroom together. Yeah, but Lawn was a good place then in those days. See, and then they had the big photograph taken. Mum's sisters, that's her mother, and her 3 sisters. That's Jeannie's father.
Oh, I see.
See, and that's Auntie Ede, and that's Auntie Flo, that's Shirley's mum. That's Uncle Jack. I don't know whether you've met Uncle Jack. He was a taxi driver, and at one of the weddings he was going outside every now and again to have a little drop of the grog, you see, and he'd say to his mother as he'd go past, it's all right, ma'am, I'm just going out to water the flowers, you know. And because she believed him, you know. She never believed that her son was drinking. Oh, that was unheard of, you know. Oh, I tell you what, we were a rousy family. Oh, this was a nice fella, and I went out with him for quite a while. He was Irish, but of course, and he worked at Evelyn's, you know, Bert Glennon. And, you know, he couldn't just let on to Mum and Dad that I'd been a divorcee. That just wouldn't have been right. Luckily, they were in Ireland and he was here. But he was a lovely fella. In Singapore, I think, and I went to see this. Yeah. Oh, charge. Oh, God, don't ask me what that is, what that means. Yes, Mum. This was all Singapore, you see, in the rickshaw, and must have been the guard outside. Yeah, and that must have been the hotel. I don't know whether you can see us in it, are we?
Yeah, we're at the back there.
Oh, I see.
You're there, Mum's there.
You see, that would be the busload of people that when we went, you know. This is a fella.
Is it?
You know, one of these.
Oh, right, like what are they called, lady boys?
There's a place in Singapore, it's called Boogie Street, and at night time it's a shopping centre during the day, and at night time it's all these people come down, you know, and when I went there with your mum, some people came and they put something on Joan's arm like this, you see.
Oh.
It was a penis, you know, a mechanical one, you see, and Joan said, "What's this? What's going on?" And we went with a married couple, an older couple, because we were a bit frightened to go in her home, and the fellow said, don't ask. But she said, "What is it? What is it? What are they doing?" You know, and he said, "Don't ask." I suppose he didn't want to tell her it was a pretend mechanical penis that they were putting on her arm. Did a lot of holidays and things together, Betty and I. It's Betty's writing, so she...
Oh, I see. It's like an itinerary. Like
Yeah.
what Christmas 75. So you went
Honolulu.
is it?
Yeah,
San Francisco.
To Las
Grand
Vegas.
Canyon,
Yeah.
yes. Vegas to Mexico City.
Yeah, no, I sort of was lucky, you see, with every Christmas we'd go somewhere. And I often look, you know, when I'm looking and seeing these clothes I had, oh, I can't believe I had all these clothes, you know, don't know where they went.
So who's that?
That's Betty.
Oh, that's Betty, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Betty, you know, introduced me just to Richard. Richard's his name was, and because he was gay. She worked at an animal shelter down near the DFO, and she met him, you see, and she said to me one time, "What do you think of Richard?" And I said, "He's bloody gay." And she said, "Oh, can you tell?" I said, "Of course you can." And he was as gay as get out. I think he must have been the female one. We never met the male half, but apparently he did have a male half. But then Leonie, that's Jim, and Leonie, that's Betty's son. And she got, you know, upset because she reckons that Richard was having a go at Jim. And so she wouldn't have a bar of Richard. One time Betty said, "Oh, Richard's not well. He sort of tried to commit suicide." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, he lives in, you know, over near the zoo." So I said, "Oh, well, I lived over there. I'd go and see him." And I said, What are you talking about? What did you do?" And he said, "About it." And I said, "You knew bloody well it was a gas strike." I said, "You had your head in the oven." I said, "It was a waste of time." Oh, he said, "Oh, you know," and he got all fluffy, you know. I said to Barry one time, "Thank God your boys are all straight, because you would never have coped." Well, Richard's mother and grandmother were okay, but his father had nothing to do with him from the child, because he just couldn't cope with it, you know. And it'd be hard. But look, if they don't boast it down your neck, you don't take any notice, do you? But
No, Brock.
What do you think?
And we can all get in.
Don't fall down.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
wasn't it a good idea when Elaine said, "Let's have a good group"? Oh, these are magnificent, aren't they?
Yeah, every day. No way, I had
No, I was coming in to meet you. The owner saw us on the truck. No, we got whatever I had to get. We got bread and whatever. Oh, there's one with Robin. Oh, because she's been a really good support for me, you know, like, and we worked together. They sort of kept in touch.
Is that all right? Yeah. Yeah, they do it.
The boys were just asking when's the cake.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Joy.
Hi, Joyce.
I suppose you just live your life as it comes along, you know, and if you're not making great big decisions, it's just a sort of an everyday life, you know. So I've had a pretty good time, you know. I've had lovely holidays and I've been healthy and, you know, I've been okay, you know. I never ever thought that I wouldn't have children, you know, during when I was young. I just thought I'd get married and have children, but it never happened.
Yeah.
Sid said, "Oh, it's a good thing you never had children." He said they'd have been, you know, in the Mont Park or something. That used to be the nut house years ago, and I remember saying, but they'd be very well behaved. I think, you know, I've done a fair bit of travelling and I've seen the places that I've wanted to see. I don't know that I want to be anywhere else but here, you know, in Australia, and but it's nice to have been overseas and see different cultures and, you know, different ways of life. So.
You love me 'cause I'm fragile.